So I'm going to do this in PowerPoint today, but there are a number of different tools that you could use for drawing a diagram. Actually, I like the Mac version Keynote just like a hair better than PowerPoint, but I know PowerPoint is fairly common, and there's really not much difference between the two, just in terms of where the buttons are. So I'm going to show you this in PowerPoint, and I'm guessing that some of you have seen these sample diagrams up on the Canvas page already. There was this one here, and we had a second one. And what I'm going to do is just walk through, and I'll just do it for one of them. This is going to be like one of those Bob Ross PBS painting shows where you see the painting at the end, and then I'm going to walk you through and say, isn't it lovely, and we'll build it as we go. So my suggestion, let me get rid of all this here. My suggestion is, like much academic work, dealing with the blank page is sometimes the hardest part. But I want to encourage you to start with a blank page if you can, and not try to work off some other template, at least in the beginning. Because part of this is not just to make a visual. This is a tool for thinking through your topic. And there are going to be things that you've thought through really well, and some other things that the process of doing this is going to raise for you, I need to think through those things a little bit more. And that's okay, that's what we want. If part of what you write about your diagram is, I still haven't figured out this part over here, that's okay. That gives us some sense of where you are in your development, both as a scholar and in terms of your topic. Okay. So let me just go ahead and start with, on both PowerPoint, Keynote, and there's other tools. If you're a Chromebook user and you want to use the Google suite of tools, Draw is very similar in how it works. We're really sort of agnostic about the platform that you use, and it's more about what you put into your visual, and that your visual does some work for you in some way. So on many of these and on PowerPoint, if you just double click in the space, the default is a text box. So if I just type teacher, spell check it when you're done. Teacher learning, and then click outside of the box, then you have sort of a first thing there. If you want to move a text box around, you just hover your cursor until you have the little 4. It looks like a 4 directional thing, and then you can click and drag it wherever you want. This may be super elementary for some of you. It may be new for others. I'm just going to kind of go forward, but feel free to stop me if something I'm doing up here doesn't quite make sense. To make this diagram, one of the things we have to do is we have to make some shapes. And in order to make a Venn diagram, you can't make a Venn diagram without circles. So we're going to put some circles on here. So I'm going to go to the Insert menu. And for all of these diagrams, the Shapes tool is going to be your friend. So I'm going to click on Shapes, and it's going to suggest a bunch of them. And you can click this one. It sort of makes a double circle. I like just the simple circle. Simple is actually better. And then if you want to make it fancy later, as you get started, keeping things simple is the way to go. So you see once you select circle, you get a little cross there. If I click and hold and then drag, I get an oval there, but we don't want an oval, we want a circle. And a way to coax your graphics into perfect shapes is to hold down the Shift key, and then it stays a perfect circle as you go back and forth. Okay, so yeah. So the default is, there may be a default for the shape. I like to give them an outline, so I'm going to give it a black outline there. And then I don't want it to have anything inside, so I'm going to select no fill, and there we have just a plain circle. Now you could do that, repeat it 2 more times, but I'm just going to say copy. So I'm hitting my key combination to copy. You could also go up here to edit and select copy. I'll do that so it's visual there. And then I want to paste it. And I paste one there, and I get another circle. So let's put that one down here, and let's paste one more. Go to edit, paste, and there we go. We have another circle there. Okay, so now I have my circles, and notice when you click on something, you make it active. and then you grab it by grabbing the side of it and dragging it up. So I'm going to make these circles look nice. They're a little smaller than my example, but it'll work. Okay. All right. And so now going back to what I had here, I had this culturally and linguistically responsive teaching there and science education there. So I'm just going to click and
dissertation study?
Yeah, well, this is a version of, it's not exactly, but it's a version of how I locate myself as a scholar. Right? So I see my own scholarship as the intersection of these three areas. I have played with this diagram over many years. The second one is from a student. We were working on something together, and she came up with that. So, I forget what I did. Responsive teaching. And this one, science. Ooh. I've become too reliant on autocorrect. Okay. And the fonts, well, let me just make these circles a little bigger here. And I'm holding the Shift key down. And notice it has some nice guides there that tell you when, hey, it's the same size as the other things or it's close. Okay, now it looks like I made it a little too close to the top, so I'm going to select all. And so what I just did there is I hit select all. And I'm going to just drag the whole thing down a little bit because I need a tight room for a title up top. Okay, and then I can straighten these out and put them here. All right, and now I want to have an arrow pointing in the middle here, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and just cut and paste that. Okay, so. Oh, that totally didn't work. Okay, I'm going to just do it the way. That's what I get for taking a shortcut. My topic. Oh, good Lord. When in doubt, just hit delete and start over. See, now it works fine. Is in. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to go back to the Shapes tool. And this time I'm going to use an arrow. And I want an arrow with a little bit of bend to it, but you can use whatever kind of arrow you want. And again, if I just draw the arrow here, it's there, but it's a little skinny. So again, you can change the weight of the line. If I make a 6-point line there, and we can make it a little different. Let's make it in red just to make it a little colorful here. Okay, so I can say my topic is here. All right. Now you can get as creative or non-creative as you want in this middle space. I'm just going to,
Excuse me.
yes.
Can you explain how it comes together?
Sure. So for me, so my area, I'm looking at the intersection. So a Venn diagram says if you have area A and area B, the intersection of A and B is something, right? It's the thing that you care about. Here, instead of just having two areas, science education and culturally linguistic responsive teaching, that was my master's degree, right? Those are those two things. And then for my doctoral degree, I added teacher learning onto it. And so my original area of interest was here, but once I put teacher learning into it, now the area of overlap of these three areas is right there. I suppose I can adjust the circles a little bit to make it cleaner, but I think you can.
So what Doug is demonstrating is positioning the topic within the broader idea of literature.
Exactly. And actually, since we're talking about literature, this might be a good place to just add some sample literature. So I prepared these ahead of time in notes. And I suggest that's a good way to do it. So have whatever text you're going to paste in, just have it set up ahead of time somewhere else. I use these, these little sticky notes that are on my computer, but you could just use a Word document. So for teacher learning, I have these. And if I go back to this diagram here, let's see if it lets me paste them in. Yeah, it lets me paste them in. They're a bit big font-wise, so let's go down to 20 point. And then I can move those over here. And those are going to be associated with teacher learning. And then I can do the same with the culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. Look at that, Lucas and Villegas. They're nice people. Every citation is a thank you note, by the way. It's a good way to think. Okay, so I'll put that there. Again, I might move my circle a little bit just to make it visually okay. And then put the science ed ones in here. Okay. And again, just moving them around so that they're somewhere close to the science ed. You can take time and make it look pretty at the end. That's not a bad idea. I'm rushing it a little bit. So in the middle here, if you want to get fancy with the shapes, if I want to insert a shape that size, I can do this. I can create a shape. And the one that we want is the just sort of this odd shape, which is free form. So, but actually I want to free form with curves. Which one was that? I think it was this one. Let's see if this is the right one. And so I just drag the cursor around. Oh no, that's ugly. I don't like that one. Let's go back. Let's do the free form one. It's much cleaner. But again, you do you, right? Okay, so this one, I'm just making outlines here of where I want the shape to go. I'm not too worried about it covering the arrow. We'll deal with that in a minute. Okay. All right, not perfect, but oh no, it covered my arrow. What do you do? So the way that all graphic software works is in layers. One thing is on top, another thing is on the bottom. If you want to move something like a red arrow to the top, you go to Arrange, and you can say Bring to Front, and it'll bring that thing up to the top layer. If you envision it as sort of a layer cake, it moves the arrow from the middle layer somewhere where the blue is over top of it up to there. And maybe I don't want it blue, maybe I want it some other neutral color like a dull gray or something like that. You can do whatever you want. Let's make it pretty. Let's do a yellow. Okay. All right. So, and then the last thing that you need is a title. And I would encourage thinking about what you've actually created. And sometimes if you start with the title and create something, you might feel beholden to that title as you go. But my advice is that as you're creating this and thinking through where your question is situated, your title might change. So allow yourself the luxury of changing what you thought the title was. And like everything, please put your name on your paper, right? We always want to do that. So again, I'm going to put mine in here. Let's see. Okay. And I'm going to just move this. I'll just pretend it works and put it over here. Okay. But again, like this, so okay, it's not exactly the Bob Ross painting. It's sort of a different painting, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to what we did here. If you want to fill in these shapes, you can certainly do that. You just select the shape, and you can select the fill under Insert. Let's see, Design. Oh, I don't know where I lost it. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Shape Fill. And so you could make it gray if you want. Oh, okay, we don't want that, so we'll send that to the back. Send to back, and we'll do the same here. Send it, arrange, send to front. Cool. I want to bring teacher learning up front, so we'll put send to bring to front. Now if I move this here, okay, I'm gonna get rid of the fill. Undo can be your friend too. All right. Don't make it so complicated that you spend hours doing that stuff. I know what I did on this other one. I used the opacity tool. Okay. So you can make something like this with PowerPoint. I want to add that if you're making posters for a conference, PowerPoint is pretty much what people use for making posters as well. So learning to manipulate graphics is a skill that goes beyond just this task. And I think you can probably guess that, one like this, which is the other sample one, was made in a fairly similar manner. You create the shape, except this one had colored boxes. You can change the font color to whatever color you want. Make it easy for us to read, but here white made sense. And I want you to notice this one has a sort of a different thing at the bottom where it says lingering questions about my research trajectory. That's okay to include there and to talk about. Katie, do you want to take it? I'll put them side by side. If
Yeah.
you, okay.
Okay, so Doug talked about kind of the mechanics of this, but I think it's also important to note that these two sample visuals were not created specifically in the context of this task. And so we wanted to spend a little time looking at the content of them and thinking about how they do fulfill the task and what else you might need or what might need to be different as you think about the task. So,
Okay, I think we got
okay.
that might be as good as we get there.
So we're just going to look at
Oh, sorry.
we're going to look at the substance, and I have some questions. I just also wanted to start by saying that one of the things, because you will likely do a different version of a visual for your dissertation as part of what's called a conceptual framework for your dissertation. That's going to be a lot more specific. But in general, one of the nice things when you've got a good visual is you should have an articulation basically between the visual and the way that you structure the written piece. So in this case, if you're looking at Doug's, if Doug was to write that piece, he would probably have a heading that said teacher learning, and then he would talk about teacher learning. He'd have a heading that said culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. He'd talk about that. A heading that said science education. Talk about that. And then he would talk about the way that they come together and how that situates his work, right? So you can really see that structure. Here you would kind of see the topic talked about, the method, the theory. Now this is something that you would more likely have further along. Just so if you're worried about, I don't have a theoretical framework, don't look at this. So just looking at the task itself, if you were to look at these, what would you say is the top, if someone turned in these two for this task, is it clear the topic for each, and what is that topic? So, thoughts?
The first one, I think the title gives a clear indication of the topic. Very much in teachers to culturally perceived learners. Because he has the Venn diagram, he has culturally linguistically responsive teaching, he has science education, teacher learning, and then he said his topic is situated somewhere in the middle, so it seems as though those ideas frame this topic.
Right, so I'm gonna, and I know this is Doug, so
I have a very thick skin. Do whatever.
yes.
We build
So-
stuff up and we tear it down. We'll do it to all of you too. That's
So
how this
I would
works.
agree with that, but I would say that to some extent the visual should stand alone. So if I were looking at this in the context of this task, I would probably take that title, exactly pointed, and I would put it right here. So I would say that my topic is in the center, and that topic is around preparing mainstream teachers. So you're more narrowly focusing that overlap. Does that make sense to folks? What about the topic here?
I'm sorry, would you say preparing science mainstream teachers, or would that?
Or you could phrase it differently. You could say the preparation of teachers, of mainstream teachers to teach culturally, so I think that you might tweak the wording, but you would kind of specifically show in your visual, like, this is what I'm interested in looking at. So here, what would you say is the topic here? Professional development for literacy coaches. And then there are some kinds of pieces of that topic here, right? So if you were to say this idea of situating the work, which one do you think better shows how the topic is situated in the literature and why?
The first one.
Why?
The second one sort of talks about the tasks or the things to look at, but that's not connecting to the big ideas as much.
Right, so here, because somebody has already kind of narrowed their topic, this person has narrowed their topic and they're getting into method, they're getting into theory, they're not doing a whole lot, there's just a couple citations here, they're not doing a whole lot of saying, where does this fit into the broader world? Whereas when you look at Doug's, you can really see it's like, okay, this is how it connects to the broader world, right? In each of these, what would you say are kind of well, I think it's obvious in the first, but in the second, what are the key concepts that this person is looking at?
What is literacy coaching?
So what is literacy coaching? What else?
Let's
So literacy coaching would be a key topic. What else would be a key topic?
Teacher learning.
Teacher learning, right? Because you're looking at how do people learn to be.
Yes, and we have cultural linguistic responsive teaching. So that's a lot there. What does it mean to be? Where are we on the first one? Or the second
No,
one?
I'm doing the second one, sorry. So you've got literacy coaching in general, you've got teacher learning and professional development, and basically like how do those two main ideas, if you were to do it as a Venn diagram, you would be saying how do those two things overlap? What is the teacher learning and the professional development work that goes into developing literacy coaching? And in order to do that, of course, you have to understand what literacy coaching means. You know, what does it mean to be a good coach? What are the tasks? What are the skills needed, et cetera, and then how do you get somebody there? So again, that's the Venn diagram can help you kind of see that. And then you would want to see the relationship among concepts, right? So here, and Doug, even though I picked on yours to start, in which one do you feel like you have a better understanding of the relationship among concepts?
The first one.
Yeah, on the first one because there's a connection, but you could imagine what it would look like if you were trying to see the relationships here and not also trying to focus on method and trying to focus on theory. And then the only other thing I would say is that one of the pieces of the task is the relationship also among scholars. So who are the key scholars involved? And that's something that may be hard to show in the visual, but by placing who your core who your people are in the visual, then when you go into the written piece, you can really talk about how those people, not only the work that they have done, but how that work connects to each other, whether they have made those links or you are making those links. Does that make sense? And then just I had a couple of other notes on these visuals just because, I have to be difficult. Is just does anybody have kind of a theoretical frame or an idea of kind of a theoretical tool or space that they might want to be including in a visual? Okay, you don't have to answer right now. The reason I bring this up is I would personally argue that these are not theoretical frameworks. Next year we'll have the wonderful samples from you all. Because they're theoretical frameworks connected to those. But teacher learning in and of itself is not a framework. There are different frameworks or ideas about how teachers learn within the broad umbrella of teacher learning. And one or more of those may be really critical to your understanding. But saying that it's teacher learning is so big, and it doesn't really say what does that indicate about how teachers learn, for example. And so I would just kind of take that one with a piece of caution.
Which, by the way, where's the theoretical framework on this one?
Right.
There's not one. Sorry for the microphone. That's a thumbs down.
Yeah, and so part of this task is not necessarily incorporating the theoretical framework. So don't worry about that. But I will say that when you move towards dissertation, one of the things that you're going to find is that theory is absolutely essential and so helpful in helping you to connect. So if you want to connect culturally linguistically responsive teaching and teacher learning, you need to know what is my understanding of teacher learning? What do I understand? What does theory help me understand about how teachers learn? And how is that going to help me think about the development of culturally responsive teaching? Because depending on how you understand teacher learning from a theoretical standpoint, you're going to think about that differently in terms of its relationship to culturally responsive teaching. Does that make some sense? Just to do the question?
Yeah, kind of. So let's look at Doug's example. So culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, we know Lucas and Villegas have a framework for that. Would we make that explicit in our 2 to 3 page paper, like one framework that interests me is, or do we not need to make that explicit for this?
I mean, Doug and Ana Maria were involved in developing this and I wasn't, so I can say my response would be that you should make this what it works for you. Like if you're kind of down that path of like, this is something that I think I'm gonna wanna dig in more deeply to, pull that in. Because in part, this is gonna be a discussion point. And so the more that you kind of have that, I always talk to people, and I'm sure you've heard this and other things, Doug has heard this from me a million times, about the funnel. Anyone talk to you about the idea of a funnel? So in general, when I think about research, I think about kind of the top of the funnel is the broad set of topics you're interested in, right? And as you narrow down, you get to the point of the funnel is what you're actually going to study, right? And so in Doug's case, he's got these 3 different things swirling around at the top of the funnel, but he's already got the big topic of, I want to look at teacher education and development. I want to look at it in the context of science and culturally responsive teaching. And then theoretically, he's going to use, Gloria Ladson-Billings' work to kind of, and Ana Maria's work to kind of say, more narrowly, I want to look at it through this particular kind of frame. And that points me to wanting to ask this kind of question. And so the further down you can try to get in that funnel, the kind of more you'll be able to discuss. Does that make sense?
Keep in mind that this is a start.
Right, exactly.
And you're still not committed even
Yeah.
to whatever topic you articulate. So it's an experience and getting you to think about thinking about. That's,
So it could be more of a frameworks that interest me as opposed to I will use this framework.
yes.
What I would encourage you to do though for this is to not just say these are all the frameworks that interest me. Like to narrow it down so that you have a chance to play with the concepts. So if you can narrow down to a small number of core concepts, then that gives you the space to really think, how do these things that interest me really connect? Like I know Doug is interested in the use of technology and he's interested in professional community. So say those were, or at least at some point, that's, and say those were kind of 2 of his buckets. Then maybe he has one other bucket, maybe he doesn't, and then he can kind of say, well, if I know this about technology and education, and I know this about professional communities, and I maybe know this about teacher learning, because I really want to know how professional community connects to teacher learning, then what happens when I put them together? And what would be the kinds of things that I'm learning from research from other places that would help me to think about how those connect? And I have one kind of, so I apologize. coffee like crazy. Any questions?
I thought of one very important last technical thing to show you, and that's how to save it so you can upload it. So maybe we can end with that. When you've got your final visual and you're ready to send it off, so you're going to go to Save As, and my suggestion is to save it as a PDF. So you can select the different file formats, and you just go down here to select PDF, and those are the easiest to work with. If you send image files, sometimes they get compressed or stretched or whatever, but a PDF, it's printing it exactly as you see it on the screen. And so that's going to be my suggestion as you finish up. So you select PDF, hit export, and you're good to go. Well, I had like 5 pages on it. You'll just have 1 page. It'll be easy. Any other questions?
What are some topics that, that you're interested in?
Mine?
Well, you can start.
Right now I'm kind of focusing on how to use STEM functional linguistics to prepare mainstream teachers to teach academic language to yellows.
So you've already got a framework there to work with, and you've got different concepts, academic language, and so I can begin to envision if you're using a Venn diagram, what that might look like. I can even anticipate what some of your citations are going to be. How about you, Mickey?
I don't kind of changes a lot. I have a note from the end of last semester where I was really thinking about social constructions of teachers, using narratives to address those. But in the short time in between, I've started to become really interested in ideas about masculinity and mental health issues in education, which I feel like we haven't necessarily read about yet, but we're about to read about disability. So maybe somewhere in those 2 camps would be worth exploring.
And since we're a program that focuses on teacher learning, teacher development, you're going to have to find some link to that. Because otherwise your coursework is not going to totally work.
Right. Sorry.
That was an assumption.
Sorry.
Okay, got it. Anybody else? Yeah, Liz.
Okay. Ana Maria, I'm sorry. Somebody else needs the room.
Sorry.
We can keep this going somewhere else.
Before we go, Ana Maria, the cohort 8 got you a little gift as a thank you for all of your help and support. And just thank